Good evening to everyone. And this is the grammar topic, that is lecture number 5 that we are going to start about. Now, in this particular lecture, we are going to deal with two concepts right now, and there will be a third concept coming up. That is, once we are done with direct, indirect speech and degrees of comparison, we will be talking also about active and passive voice. So stay tuned till the end. Since it's a revision lecture, you have to sit back and listen to me carefully. Before we start with the lecture, I hope everybody is following these tips whenever it comes to grammar or writing skill or any particular concept in the entire language. That is, you have to watch the Robomate lectures, learn the important rules which are there in the LMR sheet, or obviously the LMR sheet will be provided to you, but apart from that you also have the grammar workbook which is provided to you. So you have to go through all the concepts, that is the main rules of each and every concept, go through them, and while you practice you have to keep them in front of you so that you don't miss out on anything. Just in case if you master any particular thing, you can simply practice extra questions, right, from the worksheets that are being provided to you. And then also you can talk about these doubts, okay, in the the Robomate application forum that we have. So this is my bag, as we all discuss, right? All the books related to different concepts that we have here, right? We have been discussing this all the time. Then also, if you want to practice any writing skill like like letter writing and grammar like model auxiliary, you can have the worksheets ready over there in the Robomate application itself. Keep practicing them so that you can come up with new doubts, right? And the same process again repeats, right? So as I said, you can discuss all the doubts with your friends on the Robomate forum, where you can post a doubt and your friends can reply on that. And then if you still have any doubt in your mind, you can simply note it down and you can come down to the doubt solving lecture, right? So now we are starting up with our direct, indirect speech. So listen to me carefully. Since it's a revision, I'm going to revise all the concepts, all the main pointers from the direct, indirect speech, right? Now, when it comes to direct and indirect speech, first of all, we all know that in this particular concept, there are 3 people involved. I'm repeating, in this entire concept of direct and indirect speech, which is also known as narration and which is also known as reported speech. In this entire concept, we have 3 people involved. That is the first person, second person, and the third person. What is a direct speech? So whenever a first person, that is the speaker, for example, right now I am the speaker and you all are the listeners. So there is a conversation wherein the first person, that is the speaker, says something and the second person listens to it. So there is a one-way conversation, that is the speaker says something and listener hears it. Then when it comes to changing into indirect speech, the second person shares everything with the third person. Let's say a friend. So there is a chain from first person, the information goes on to second person shares the same thing to the third person. This is how the indirect speech works. Now, another rule is that easiest to identify. That is, whenever a sentence is given with the help of punctuations, a punctuated sentence is a direct speech. This is the easiest way to identify that. And without punctuation, it is an indirect speech. Now, we have also learned that There are two verbs in any sentence of a direct speech and an indirect speech, right? So right now we are only talking about the direct speech. Indirect speech, any verb which is outside the inverted commas, that is the double inverted commas, it is known as bahar ka verb or reporting verb. So which is the reporting verb here? It is said. Said is the reporting verb here. On the other hand, if we take a look on the inside, that is inside the inverted commas, then we will find out that the entire sentence is known as a reported speech, and am is the andar ka verb or reported verb. So in this manner, we have learned that we have bahar ka verb, that is said, and andar ka verb, that is am. So once again, I'm repeating this particular part so that we don't miss out on anything. In the sentence, Nitin said, I am happy now. Said, which is outside the inverted comma, is a bahar ka verb, while am, which is inside the inverted comma, is known as andar ka verb. Or in technical terms, we also call it reporting verb and reported verb respectively. Now, when we change the sentences right from direct speech to indirect speech, whenever we change from direct speech to indirect speech, there are 5 different changes that take place. So which are those 5 different changes? Here we go. Punctuations, that is, all the punctuation marks are removed from direct to indirect. The second change is the change of tense, that is, am changes to was, that is present, to past. Change of pronoun, that is, I changes to he. Comma becomes a connective. Now there are different types of connective. So which are those connectives? First is that, then we have to, then we can have any WH word, or we can have if or whether. So in this manner, we can have 4 different types of connectives. So these words take the position of the comma. Now it varies according to the sentence, which we are going to talk about in a while. For now, let's get on to change number 5. That is now, which has changed to then. That is what we call as change in words or change of words. So likewise, we have 5 different changes that take place from direct speech to indirect speech. So which are the connectives that we have just learned? That, to, WH word, if or whether. That, to, WH word, if or whether. Moving on. Now when to change? It's very easy. When to change the tense? Everybody is confused in this case that when do we change the tense? In which situation are we supposed to do it? So in order to make your job easier, here I'm going to show you that whenever we have bahar ka verb in the past tense, that is, whenever we have said as a bahar ka verb, only in such a case we can change the tense. Now, which are the cases in which we cannot change the tense? So, if the bahar ka verb or reporting verb is in present tense, or if the bahar ka verb is in future tense, even in such a case, we cannot change the tense. Now, sometimes the bahar ka verb that is said is in past tense, but the reported speech, that is sentence inside the inverted comma, is habit, proverb, or universal truth. So even in this case, we are not supposed to change the tense. I'll repeat. Whenever in a reported speech, that is in the inverted commas, if we have habit, proverb, or universal truth, in spite of having said as a bahar cover, we are not supposed to change the tense. So these are the situations in which we are not supposed to change any tense of any sentence. Habit means, if I can give you an example here, let's say he says, I read newspaper every day. Now I am in the habit of reading newspaper. So in this case, this becomes a habit. Proverb would be, honesty is the best policy, is a proverb. Universal truth, the sun rises in the east. Universal truth, the earth is round. There are 7 colors in a rainbow. These are all universal truths. Now it's time to check, how will the tense change? Whenever we come up to a situation where we have figured out that bahar ka verb is in past tense, now it's time to change the andar ka verb. So andar ka verb कब change होगा और कौन से tense में change होगा, so ये हमें अभी देखना है. So how do we go about? So first things first, I want to clear out that there are only 2 types of changes in the direct to indirect speech. So how many changes are there? There are only 2 types of tense change. One is, if the direct speech is in present tense, the indirect speech gets converted into past tense. That means, if I say, Neha said, I eat sweets, which is the andar ka verb here? It is eat. Very good. Eat is the andar ka verb. So when I want to change the andar ka verb, I will have to consider its tense. Eat is a present tense. Hence, when I change it to indirect, eat changes to past tense, that is ate. This is our change number 1. Let's go on to change number 2. What if the direct speech is already into a simple past, such as Neha said, I ate sweets. In this case, because it is by default a past tense, whenever I change from direct to indirect, it becomes past perfect tense, that is, had eaten. These are the only 2 changes that we face in direct to indirect speech. Now, what if we have modal auxiliaries given in the sentence, such as can, will, shall, may? Whenever we have can, will, shall, may, we change them to could, would, should, might, respectively. In order to make this entire process easier, I hope everybody remembers this is the rap that we had done in order to remember the entire rule. Wasn't it interesting? The reported rap that we had done. So how does it go? So here we have बाहर का टेंस पास्ट तो हिच अंदर चेंज कर, प्रेजेंट को तू पास्ट में कर, पास्ट को तू पास्ट परफेक्ट में कर, एम इज आर वॉज वर में बदल, हैव और हैज को हैड में बदल. In the sentence, may becomes might, can becomes could, will, would, shall, should. There's no change for all the proverbs, habitual actions, universal truths. Isn't it? Once again, बाहर का टेंस पास्ट तो हिच अंदर चेंज कर, प्रेजेंट को तू पास्ट में कर, पास्ट को तू पास्ट परफेक्ट में कर, am is are was were में बदल, have और has को had में बदल. In the sentence, may becomes might, can becomes could, will, would, shall, should. There's no change for all the proverbs, habitual actions, universal truth, right? Yes. So don't forget to buy heart this reported rap in order to make your job easier. Let's go ahead with the adjoining changes that we are yet to do. That is the change in pronoun. Now, this is a very important part of the direct and indirect speech, since this is the one where many of them get stuck. So listen to me carefully. Here is the example. That is, he said to her, I don't know where they have seen you. He said to her, I don't know where they have seen you. Now, in this case, let's divide the sentence into two different parts for our study. That is, right now, only focus inside the inverted commas. Now, inside the inverted commas, we have the pronouns. That is, I, they, you. Now, we all are aware that we have three-person pronouns. That is the first person, second person, third person. So which is the first person pronoun? It is I or we. Second person is you, while the third person is he, she, it, and they. So in this manner, we have dealt with the first person, second person, and third person. Now it's time to focus on outside the inverted comma. That is, no matter whatever they have written, you have to consider the highlighted words. That is, even if they have written it noun or pronoun, you have to consider them as subject and object, or speaker and the listener. Once again, I'm repeating. Even if they have written pronouns, we are supposed to consider them as subject and the object, or speaker and the listener. Now, how are they helpful to us? So, the time when we change the sentence from direct speech to indirect, subject, that is he, is going to take place of the first person pronoun, that is I, and second person pronoun, which is you, is going to be replaced by the object, that is her. So now, once again, we are going to check that. But before that, here we go. What is the third? Do we have any third uh, uh, person over here? So yes, we have a third person over here, that is they, but it is not going to change. That is, there will be no change in it. So once again, subject takes the position of the first person, that is I. Object will take the position of the second person, that is you, while the third person will have no change. So in this manner, we have dealt with the pronoun change, that is first person subject, second person object, and third person no change. Now, how to remember this? So we have a formula, that is 1, 2, 3, SON. 1, 2, 3, SON. 1, 2, 3, SON. So till here, I hope everybody has understood very nicely and neatly. So now it's time to go ahead with the last part of it, that is the change in words. That is, we have a list of words that change. That is, now changes to then, this changes to that, ago changes to before, and etc., etc., etc. So this is a list of words that change right from direct to indirect. But not just that. Whenever we come across sentences such as said sorry, or said thank you, or said goodbye, we can write it or replace it with apologized, thanked, bid goodbye, and so on, while the rest of the changes are here. So now it's time for you to read it carefully, and then we can continue. So time to move ahead with the concept. Here we go with a very, very important concept, that is when to use that, when to use to, when to use WH word, and when to use a for whether. So now the connectives instead of comma, whenever we write these connectives, that is that, to, WH word, or a for whether instead of comma, it is all subjective. That means it all depends on the type of sentence. That means we know which are the different types of sentences, that is assertive, exclamatory, imperative, and interrogative, right? And whenever we deal with these connectives, not only the commas are going to change, but also there is going to be a change in the bahar ka verb, that is the word said, says, will say, or said to. So there will be some change also in that. So let's start. Here we come with says, said, and said to. What if we have says, said, or said to in the bahar ka verb? In the assertive sentence, says remains says, said will remain said, but if we have said to, then we are supposed to change into told. For instance, Aditya told Ravi that, and the sentence. How will you have the question? So, he said to her changes to he told her that. Okay, so in the assertive sentences, connective, that is the comma, changes to that. Now it's time to go into the exclamatory. In the exclamatory, the bahar ka verb, that is says, said, or said to, can be replaced with exclaims or exclaimed, while the connective remains as it is, that is that. But when it comes to imperative sentence, there is a slight change, that is imperative sentences contain order, request, suggestion, advice, command. So in this case, the words like says, said, said to can be changed to commanded, ordered, requested, suggested, advised, wished, prayed, and so on. But not to mention and not to forget here, connectives are also going to change here, but not to that. Rather, we are going to change the word, the comma, to plus verb, that is infinitive. First, the examples are, I said, bring me a glass of water, which will change to, I ordered to bring me a glass of water. And the negative version would be, I said, or I ordered not to bring me a glass of water, which will be a negative version of it, right? So now it's time to move on to the interrogative sentence, that is whenever it comes to says, said, or said to, that is bahar ka verb, will be replaced with asked, or inquired, or questioned, while the connective, that is comma, depends on whether it is a WH question or a yes or no question. For example, in a WH question like, I said, what are you doing? I repeat, I said, what are you doing? In this case, the WH word which is given here is what. So whenever we convert into indirect speech, we are going to use the same WH word in the answer. That is, I asked him what, and the adjoining sentence. But what if we have a yes or no question like, I said, are you going to picnic tomorrow? In this case, I haven't used any WH word. Hence, it is known as a yes or no question. And in this case, comma will change to either if or whether. So let's continue with the next concept, that is degrees of comparison. Now in degrees of comparison, here we have a quick recap of it. When it comes to degrees of comparison, comparison is done either between only two things or more than two things. Person A is compared with person B, or person A is compared to the rest of the world or to everybody. In this manner, one particular object or matter is compared to either another object or matter or the rest of the things or more than two things. So right now we are focusing on what happens when we have more than two things. So there are two different types of changes that take place when it comes to more than two things. That is, let's start with the superlative degree. Let's say in first type, we say the tallest. Person A is the tallest. But if we change it into another superlative degree, that is the second type, that is, we can also say one of the tallest. So in this case, although although both the sentences are superlative degree, they convey different meaning. That is, on the left hand side, that is the tallest, we can see that the person has no competition for him. While on the right hand side, when I say one of the tallest, there is a little competition for the person compared. Same goes with comparative degree. Person A is taller than any other. That means there is once again no competition for the person. No matter whichever person you bring in front of him, he is going to fall short. On the other hand, if I say person A is taller than many other, that means there is a competition or a slight competition for him. In the positive degree, if I say no other person is as tall as person A, in this particular sense, we can say there is no other person, that means no competition at all. But if I say there are very few people who are as tall as him or her, in this case, I can see that there is a little competition for the person compared. Now, moving on with the concept, in the two types which we can see in front of us, we can notice that these are the more than two things compared. And within that, we have two different types. So I hope everybody remembers that this was the table that we were using. Can anyone tell me what are these highlighted words for? Yes, you have guessed it right. It is the bodyguards. That means these are the bodyguards. That means they are the identifiers of the degree. That means if I want to identify a positive degree, it is as and as. If I want to identify a comparative degree, it is than. And if I want to identify a superlative degree, we have to focus on the. So this is how we identify the degree of comparison. Hence, we follow the rule for superlative. In the first type, we say the, than plus any other or all other, no other or none plus as and as. These are the combinations for the first type of comparison. That is, whenever we have no competition for the person compared. But whenever we want to show that an object or person compared has a little competition, we use another combination, that is one of the, than plus many other or most other, very few plus as and as. So this goes for the second type of more than two things. Let me remind you, both these types of the sentences have comparison of more than two things. Now, what if there are specifically two things compared? So in such a case, what do? Yes, we do not use no other, we do not use very few, we do not use than plus any other or all other or many other or most other. Rather, we use a formula, that is swapping the two things, the 2 degrees, and affirmative and negative. In the third type, we specifically have only two things compared. That is, person A is compared to person B. So in this case, we always follow the rule of first swapping the two things, that is, person A changes to person B and so on. 2 degrees, that means only 2 degrees are possible here. That is positive and comparative. That means superlative is impossible. Affirmative to negative, that means affirmative sentence changes to negative, negative changes to affirmative. Now, how does this work? Here we go with the example. Harry is taller than Mickey. So here we can see there are two things compared, and that is Harry and Mickey. Now this belongs to the third type of the sentence. That means specifically only two things compared. Now, how to change this part? So let's start with the step. First step is swap the two things. That means Harry takes the position of Mickey and Mickey takes the position of Harry. Second step, swap the 2 degrees, that is taller than changes to as tall as, that is positive degree. Third step, affirmative sentence changes to negative sentence, that is changes to is not. So this is the way we are supposed to deal with this particular, that is third type of sentence. So once again, here we have another set of example coming up. Let's go. Ram is wiser than Sham. So once again, it is very easy. Ram and Sham will be swapped. Next, wiser than will be swapped to as wise as. Comparative changes to superlative. Sorry, comparative changes to positive, yes. And affirmative changes to negative, that is changes to is not. Once again, here we go. Mahabaleshwar is as cool as Matheran. So in this case, once again, Matheran and Mahabaleshwar are going to swap, that is two things. Next, positive degree, that is as cool as. Is it going to change to superlative? No, it is going to swap to comparative, because superlative is impossible, hence cooler than. Affirmative changes to negative, that is changes to is not. I'm pretty sure that now everybody must have understood each and everything from this concept of third type whenever we compare two specific things. All right, now it's time to continue with the next concept, that is active and passive voice. So we know that there are two different types of voices, that is active and passive. So what have we learned in the active and passive voice? So whenever a sentence begins with a subject or a doer of the action, that is in the sentence Ram writes a letter, Ram is the doer of the action, that is he is writing the letter. Because the sentence starts with a doer of the action, we consider this as an active voice. While in this sentence, a letter is written by Ram, a letter is not doing the action. Hence, we can either call it a non-doer or an object. Whenever a sentence starts with a non-doer or an object, it is known as the passive voice. The next thing that we have learned here is that the tense in the active and passive voice never change. If the active voice is in simple present, even the passive voice will have to be in the simple present. Hence, we call as no change in tense. That is, if I say the boy eats the cake, I will have to change to the cake is eaten by the boy. because is marks the present tense. Hence we say that no change in tense. Okay, so the next thing that we have learned here is that how to change the voice from active to passive. So what are the steps that we are supposed to follow here? So with the help of the sentence written on the right hand corner, that is active on the first and passive below that, we are going to understand the steps to change. And these are simply the 4 easy steps that you can follow and make your change the voice easier. So first step is to change the positions of subject and the object. That is, boy takes the position of the cake and the cake takes the position of the boy. The next thing here is correction of the to be form. The to be form is nothing but the helping verb or auxiliary verb. In the active voice, you can notice we do not have any helping verb given. That is, the boy eats the cake. Do we have any helping verb given here? No. Hence, when we change into passive voice, we are supposed to make the corrections. But these corrections, that is, while adding any auxiliary verb, we are supposed to consider its tense. For example, the boy eats the cake is a present tense, a simple present tense. Hence, when I change it to passive voice, I have put in is as my helping verb. This is your second step. Third step is every main action or main verb is going to change to its past participle form. That means eats, which is the only main verb here, is going to change to eaten. That is EN-ED form. This is your third step. While the fourth step is to add a preposition by. Hence, the cake is eaten by the boy. So this is the list of verbs that we have or we are going to use in the entire active and passive voice. For example, present tense and past tense use am, is, are, was and were, while future tense is going to use will and shall. Continuous tense already has the helping verb in the list, that is am, is, are, was and were. While perfect tense, like how we have learned in the tenses, that perfect tense always make use of have, has, had and will have in the perfect tenses. Now, whenever we change the sentence from active to passive, we make corrections in the auxiliary verb. Remember the second step, correcting the to be form? Yes. So while correcting the to be form or correcting the auxiliary, we make these changes. That is, in future, we add be as an addition, will be or shall be. In the continuous tense, being, being is the word which is an addition. So am being, is being, are being, was being, were being. Same with the perfect tense. When we change from active to passive, along with these auxiliaries, we are going to add one more word, that is BEEN, that is be. So here we go with what we have dealt with. What is the easiest step to remember this entire concept of active passive? So once again, we had this entire song, that is active to passive arti. So present tense देखा तो am is are करना, past tense को देखा तो was were करना, right? And with that we have these examples given, right? Because we have a present tense here, that is Rahul helps Tina, we have used is. And because we have past tense in Rahul helped Tina, we used was. In a similar way, we have used the same concept for the future tense, that is will shall ko dekha to will shall be karna, and have has ko dekha to have has been karna. That's why will in Rahul will help Tina changes to will be, and in the perfect tense has changes to has been. But let me mark an important part here, that is will being a part of model auxiliary. All the model auxiliaries, whenever we change to from active to passive, they change with the addition of be. That is, will becomes will be, can becomes can be, may becomes may be, should become should be, and so on. Similarly, we have the same changes here. That is, had ko dekha to had been karna, and will have ko dekha to will have been karna. That means the past perfect tense and the future perfect tense. So had changes to had been, and will have changes to will have been, while the rest of the things remain the same. That is, all the 5 steps, all the 4 steps are going to be followed here. The same goes with the continuous tense, that is, am is are dekha to am is are being, and was were ko dekha to was were being. Hence, in the continuous tense, is, which is already given, changes to is being, and was changes to was being. So in this manner, we have this entire song ready, just like reported rap. So here we have the easiest song to remember for the active passive RP, right? So let's sing it once, and then we can end the lecture for today. That is, present tense dekha to am is are karna, past tense ko dekha to was were karna, will shall को देखा तो will shall be करना, have as को देखा तो have as been करना, had को देखा तो had been करना, will have को देखा तो will have been करना, am is are देखा तो am is are being, was were को देखा तो was were being करना. जय देव जय देव. Isn't it interesting? So the last line also goes the same way. Active से passive तक इतना ही करना, और डूअर को तुम नॉन डूअर करना. जय देव जय देव. So isn't it an interesting way to learn the active and passive voice? Absolutely. So thank you very much for your lecture. Keep practicing the active and passive sentences, and then we can all join once again for the doubts. Thank you so much. Goodbye. See you again in the next lecture.